ANC reminds former Speaker of giant strides recorded by President Buhari as reactions trail former President Olusegun Obasanjo's letter on the state of the nation.
Three tiers of government share over 650 billion naira in federation account.
And Senate deliberates on distribution of higher institutions as House of Representatives consider bill to amend WAEC Act.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, our focus is on developing skills for the future workforce.
Wow. Let's begin with what appears to be the magical year 2020. And we're told it's the year that will herald the next industrial revolution. And by the way, 2020 is barely 2 years away. Now back to the Industrial Revolution. So what about it? Again, we are told that in 2 years' time or thereabout, most jobs you see today will disappear. And Kingsley Guthrie Jensen, that's one of the leading management training and consultancy providers in the world, has really done an extensive research in this area.
Absolutely, Claire. Now, quoting from the research report, it says that by year 2020, about 5 million jobs will be replaced by automated machines. Now, new markets will emerge, which will require a new set of skills for employment. Smart robots will take over some jobs, and jobs that didn't exist before will be in demand.
Kingsley, now, probably by 2020, neither me nor Kingsley nor Rhoda or Blessing will be presenting Good Morning Nigeria. That's what it means.
That's not what it means. Okay, there will still be human jobs.
Okay, there will still be human jobs. So, so what does this translate to? By 2020, world economy would require innovative skills that will drive societal industrial needs. Now, global investment would also then be driven by availability of people with the right skills. Is this a challenge for Nigeria, Kingsley?
Yeah, that's the proper question to pose, because right now there is a wide gap in available skills and what will be needed to power the emerging knowledge and technological economy. According to research, this gap has its roots in the quality of education and what has also been described as a misalignment of our education curriculum and industrial needs. This is obviously reflected sometimes in the quality of some graduates who appear to be largely unequipped for future work.
All right, now it is estimated that between 400 million and 800 million individuals could be displaced by automation and need to find new jobs by 2020 and 2030 around the world. Now, of the total number to be displaced, listen carefully, of the total number to be displaced, 75 million to 375 million may need to switch occupational categories and learn new skills.
Well, that's the way the world is going. According to Rosamund Hart, 2/3 of Americans already expect that within 50 years, robots and computers will do much of the work that humans currently do. And that less than 5 years from now, according to the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report, some 5 million jobs would have been lost to automation.
Now, the report says to compete in the future job market, and mind you, that's barely two years away, workers, even those in occupational less directly affected by automation, will need to update their skill sets. Now, if one will ask, is Nigeria or indeed Africa getting ready for this?
Well, this is a question that will have this is a question that will not have, as it were, a positive response for now, considering the capacity deficit that we have in Nigeria and in most parts of Africa. This is, of course, indicated as a hindrance to the continent's development and even the implementation of the AU agenda for 2063.
Indeed, Kingsley. Now, of course, critics wondered how a continent, of course, filled with PhDs, of course, still lack the capacity to implement anything. Statistics have showed that Africa had over half the world's arts and humanities students doing courses that equip them with no practical skills. The evolving work and technological advancement is throwing up the challenge of research into new ways, new methods of delivering skills that will be needed for the next generation.
Now, experts say that the challenge now is for educators to complement their teaching of technical skills, including mathematics and computer science, with a focus on ensuring that the workers of the future have the requisite skills to compete in the new job market. So, what are the possible scenarios for employment growth, and will there be enough work, as it were, for the future? And how do we manage the upcoming workforce transitional issues?
Kingsley, you know, this is quite frightening, really, considering that it's already beginning to happen. If you remember, sometime, I think a few weeks back, in the UK or so, there was report that a self-driving car or self-driving cars,
automated yes,
will soon be in the market. And of course, we know in health, in the medical line, we're beginning to see robotics, taking,
using more and more of artificial intelligence, as it were. That's what robotics. Well, it's not so frightening. It's not so frightening. It's simply that everyone should be put on notice.
Yeah, but if
this is where the world is going. To say it's frightening is to perhaps engage in scaremongering.
You know why I said that?
Yes.
If you look at the time span that has been mentioned between 2020 and 2030 for this to transit, for countries to transit, and the wide gap of skills needed to enter into that space right now in Nigeria, you begin to wonder if we will make that transition.
Well, it's a warning shot, and it's also an indication, an advisory, as it were, and that's why we are taking on the subject matter this morning to say, look, this is the way the world is going, and what is it we are doing to prepare ourselves to be part of that global movement with regard to the application of artificial intelligence and the skill sets required to function in the emerging global economy.
All right, you've heard all the questions that we will, of course, be asking our guests on this program. As always, we don't have the answers, and that is why we have, put together, assembled those, of course, who are doing research into this area. And, of course, we'll be taking this topic for the next 2 days. That's today and, of course, tomorrow. It will be the topics on Good Morning Nigeria. If you've just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria, and we're broadcasting live from the Nigerian Television Authority, Africa's largest TV network. I am Claire Adilabu Abdul Razak.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join Claire in also welcoming you to the program. And in the course of our discussion segment, we shall also take a look, that's having guests, take a look at former President Olusegun Obasanjo's special statement yesterday calling on incumbent President Muhammadu Buhari not to contest the 2019 election. Also in the course of the program, we have our regular companion segments, including business, newspaper review, and others. Right now, we go over to our colleague, Laure Balahassan, for the morning news. Hi, Laure.
Hi, Kingsley. Good morning and a warm welcome to the news. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo has yet in another letter critical of President Buhari's administration written on the state of the nation. In it, the former president claimed that it is not yet Uhuru, even though some measure of significant achievements have been made in some areas. Malam Farouk Adamu Aliyu, a social commentator, former legislator and APC member, talked more on the latest letter by former President Olusegun Obasanjo.
Unfortunately, the former president, who is a leader in this country, who also as a leader, also a serial letter writer, he's entitled to his opinion, and the people of this country are entitled to their opinion also.
Okay.
And you also find out that he and so many other people would say President Buhari should not contest. In a democracy, you don't tell people or anybody not contest. Instead, put your own person to contest against whoever. If President Buhari is defeated, or he said he's not going to contest, then we can take it from there.
Okay.
But I think some of the things he said are true. Some of the things he said are in bad taste. As a leader, there are certain things, and also as somebody who is senior to President Buhari. There are certain things that I'm sure he could take them to the office or to the house, so that there will not be commotion, because there are so many people thinking that, okay, here is the old man again, trying to seek for relevance, to ensure people rally around him again to install a government.
Meanwhile, the presidency has appealed to the former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Galina Abba, to reconsider his harsh stance on President Muhammadu Buhari and take a second look at the president's achievements in 3 years in order for him to change his negative opinions as published in the press. In a statement by the senior special assistant to the president on media and publicity, Garba Shehu, the presidency again reminded the former Speaker of giant strides recorded since inception on May 29, 2015. Musa Abubakar reports.
Malam Garba Shehu says the response becomes inevitable in order to correct the negative impression created by the statement credited to former Speaker Gali Umar Abba. He explained that during the period under review, Nigeria has exited its worst recession in decades after 5 quarters of negative growth, with agriculture being one of the stars of 2017, posting consistent growth levels even throughout the recession. Inflation, he says, also fell for 10 consecutive months during 2017. Malam Garba Shehu notes that the Naira stabilized against the dollar after the central bank introduced a new forex window for investors and exporters, attracting billions of dollars in portfolio investments since April 2017. On the back of a stable Naira and increased investment inflows, Nigeria's stock market emerged one of the best performing in the world, delivering returns in excess of 40%. Apart from the bumper food harvest, especially in local rice, through the agricultural revolution, the impact of federal government's 701 billion naira intervention fund has been felt, with the amount of power being distributed currently steady at around 4,000 megawatt and generation output at 7,000 megawatt, higher than ever recorded since 2015. Nigeria rose 24 places on the World Ease of Doing Business rankings and earned a place on the list of top 10 reformers in the world. Nigeria's foreign exchange reserves grew $40 billion, reaching the highest level since 2014. Nigeria successfully issued 2 Euro bonds, a Sukuk bond, a diaspora bond, and the first sovereign climate bond in Africa, raising billions of dollars for infrastructure spending. The federal government launched a tax amnesty scheme expected to raise hundreds of millions of dollars in additional revenues when it closes in March 2018. The federal government successfully commenced implementation of whistleblowing programs, seeing recoveries of tens of millions of dollars. According to Senior Special Assistant to the President, the social intervention programs have yielded positive results in prompt payment of pension arrears, school feeding project in which 5.2 million children in primary schools in 19 states are being fed daily, and reduction by half the number of Nigerians facing food insecurity in the Northeast. Government agencies like the Nigerian Customs Service and JAM recorded their highest ever revenue collection against the paltry sums being remitted in the past. Malam Shehu believes that with the solid foundation laid infrastructure development in 2018, the vigorous war against corruption in public places, sustained and successful fight against Boko Haram, former Speaker Abba's claim that President Buhari has done nothing for Nigeria will have been deflated.
The news for now. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll be back after this break. Good morning.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem promptly through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime, we bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Helen! Your kitchen gets 10 out of 10. Thank you. This also gets a 10. Should we see the toilet now? Sure. This gets just 1.
It is clean,
but not perfect 10.
Better than my detergent and bleach? Impossible.
Challenge? Try the new Apic 10X.
Compared to bleach and detergent, Apic sticker formulation removes yellow stains times better, giving you a sparkling clean toilet.
Wow.
Now you also take that
Apic 10X challenge.
Also available in 200 ml pack.
Show me a worker who sleeps on duty.
Obama! Hey, Obama!
Show me a worker who is always preoccupied with something else when he should be working.
Stand Pepe, they're real big.
Mr. Flash.
Jesus Christ. Show me a worker who is never present at his desk. Show me a worker who I can go on and on.
Me too, I be a ghost worker. I report myself.
This week on Professor John Bull, we explore the satire of the worker who is not a worker. Join us in this episode titled Ghost Worker and see how Flash managed to get a job to help his life.
Even if you don't have respect for me, at least have respect for my briefcase.
Not just the briefcase, the shoes as well.
Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow,
the largest data network. Glow Unlimited.
Your perfect family is under threat by germs. Infectious diseases are now the world's biggest killer of adults and children. Every day, 16,000 children under the ages of 5 and thousands of adults die from infectious diseases. These infectious diseases are caused by germs. They are everywhere. An average human being comes in contact with over 1 million germs daily. In unclean water, dirty surfaces, in the toilet, on cuts and wounds, on your clothes. Germs can cause deadly diseases like typhoid, diarrhea, flu, and cough. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's 1 cap full for surface cleaning in your bathing water, in your laundry water, for first aid to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol sure. Endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association.
All right, thank you for being there. And just a reminder of our topic for today. We have 2 topics. The first one will be delving into opportunities for developing skills for future workforce. And we'll also be looking at former President Olusegun Obasanjo's letter to President Muhammadu Buhari. But back to now, let's talk business. Now, foreign direct investment quoted as stable in developing economies. That's at global FDI falls by $1.52 trillion. We also have in the package Federal Inland Revenue Service, excuse me, FIRS, generating 4 trillion naira tax revenue, and that's in 2017. Joy Uzo will bring us all the details.
Welcome to Business News. Accountant General of the Federation, Mr. Ahmed Idris, has revealed that the 2015 financial statements of the federal government was prepared based on the International Public Sector Accounting Standards, accrual basis, IPSAS accrual basis, thus making it the first of its kind in the history of government's financial reporting in Nigeria. Addressing the ICANN board and council members recently in Abuja, Mr. Ahmed Idris explained that preparing the financial statement based on IPSAS accrual was in keeping with his promise to ensure that the Treasury maintains a more transparent, efficient and comprehensive public financial management that will provide a more accurate view of government's financial position at any given time. He commended ICANN for their unflinching support towards the implementation of the various public financial reforms being anchored by the Treasury and challenged them to make their voice much louder in the area of the economy, saying that the body has the wherewithal to strategically engage the government with a view to improving the management of the economy. The Federal Inland Revenue Service (FIRS) said it generated 4 trillion naira from tax collection in 2017. This represents 20% or 800 billion naira increase when compared with 3.3 trillion naira generated in 2016. The Executive Director FIRS, Mr. Tunde Fowler, disclosed this during a courtesy visit to the Oba of Lagos. He said the FIRS collects revenue on behalf of all tiers of government. The performance of the FIRS, the Executive Director noted, depends on the amount of revenue that is being divided on a monthly basis between the federal government, state and the local governments. The way forward on how to support the country is taxation, Mr. Fowler said, and called for the support of all stakeholders. Stock market maintains downtrend as NSE All-Share Index dips further by 1.16% to close at 44,389.85 basis points. Next is a graphic summary. Moving on now, although global foreign direct investment (FDI) fell from $1.81 trillion in 2016 to an estimated $1.52 trillion in 2017, investment into Africa and other developing countries stood almost firm. Latest investment trends monitored by the United Nations has shown. The Investment Monitor published by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, revealed that a slump in FDI flows to developed countries by 27% was the principal factor behind the global decline. UNCTAD Secretary General Mukisa Kituyi insisted that more investment into sectors that could contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals (SDGs) remained badly needed. Finally, on business news, of the 978 million global victims of cybercrime last year, 17 million were Britons targeted by phishing, ransomware, online fraud and hacking. Hackers stole a total of 130 billion euros from customers in 2017, including 4.6 billion euros from British internet users, according to a new report from cybersecurity firm Norton. More than 17 million Britons were hit by cybercrime in the past year, meaning the nation, which accounts for less than 1% of the global population, makes up almost 2% of the 978 million global victims of cybercrime and almost 4% of the global losses. The losses were more than just financial. Each victim of cybercrime spent an average of nearly 2 working days dealing with the aftermath of the attack. But Norton warns that cybercrime victims are not doing enough to protect themselves online. The report found that they are more than twice as likely as those who haven't fallen prey to cybercrime to share passwords to online accounts with other people, and almost twice as likely to use the same password for all online accounts. And that's it on Business News. Good Morning Nigeria continues.
Thank you very much, Joy Uzo, for the business package, and Good Morning Nigeria. Next for us, we take a look at the stories on the front pages of some of today's newspapers.
right, let's begin. Of course, Kingsley, Bayo
is off today.
Is unavoidably absent today, and so we'll take the review ourselves. Let's begin with the blueprint, and as expected, all the papers we have as their headline stories the former President Olusegun Obasanjo's letter to President Muhammadu Buhari. On the front page of the blueprint, it reads, OBJ to Buhari, leave in 2019, Nigerians are angry. Of course, that's the lead story on the front page. You can see it there, and just below that, you can also see a picture story of President Muhammadu Buhari and national leader Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and former APC chieftain Chief Bisi Akande. We understand, of course, that was during the visit of the APC chieftains to the State House in Abuja yesterday. Kingsley, I know you've got different headlines.
Yeah, there are other headlines, some of them contrasting, but certainly it's the lead story for the Punch newspaper and the Nigerian Tribune. For the Punch newspaper, it comes as a double-decker headline, and it says, that's the Punch now, it says, Presidency keeps mum as Obasanjo attacks Buhari. Presidency keeps mum as Obasanjo attacks Buhari. But for the Nigerian Tribune, that's the way it comes. It says, Presidency and APC react as OBJ, that's the President Olusegun Obasanjo, writes Buhari not to recontest. That's the Nigerian Tribune. If we have that on the screen right now, you can see that headline there. It says, Presidency and APC react as OBJ writes Buhari not to recontest. There are a number of writers there, but the stories, of course, are in greater detail inside the pages of the paper, and that's also a subject matter for our discussion this morning. But there are other stories that are continuing stories, or running stories, if you like. Now, just above the nameplate of the Punch newspaper, back again to farmers and herdsmen and colonies, you have this headline. It says, Okorocha, Wike, that's two governors, Okorocha is governor of Imo, Wike Rivers, and Kaduna senator reject cattle colonies. That story is on page 10 in greater detail. And you also have another story there that's on the headline that says, Police and Taraba disagree over arms helicopter landing claim. That story is on page 8 in detail. And NNPC close to selecting financiers for refineries. That's attributed to Baru, who is Group Managing Director of NNPC.
All right, Kingsley, the blueprint has some other, also worrisome, stories. Just below the nameplates there, you find 350 million illegal weapons, porous borders threaten 2019 polls, and this is attributed to the federal government. And Kingsley, for some time, even the United Nations, raised alarm over this. Of course, stating that over 70% of the illicit weapons circulating in Africa are domiciled here in Nigeria.
Small arms and light weapons are said to be circulating in Nigeria, and the fact that people, some category of persons, openly bear arms these days would seem to lend credence to that assertion. All right. Now, there are other headlines you have there, because the front page of Blueprint is busy.
Yes, quite busy. Also, speaking to electoral matters, just again, beneath in the front, you can see it right there. Electoral Act Amendment, Reps alter election sequence. You can find the details of that on page 13. And also, we'll get the story, the sad story of the passing on of the ex-CJ, Dairu Mustafa. Of course, we're told he passed on, yesterday or so.
Yesterday, that's at the London Hospital.
Yeah.
There's another headline, just before we come to those other headlines on the front page of the Tribune. But there's an obituary story that we do not also have on the front pages of the papers that we have, and that is of Hugh Masekela.
Oh, yeah.
Hugh Masekela was an African musician. He was an icon, anti-apartheid crusader, as it were, a cultural activist. He passed away at the age of 78. That story, of course, is not on the front pages of the papers. We are sure that it will be far inside. There's a story you just read now, which one is at the foot of the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. 2019, it says, Reps propose new order of elections. Presidential election to come last, That's the proposal. That's in terms of the amendment to the Electoral Act 2010, as or previously amended as well. Now, you have other headlines there on the right side column of the panel. Buhari, Tinubu, Akonde meet in Nasser Rock. Asset declaration, Saraki federal government returned to Code of Conduct Tribunal on February 6th. Police detain and release Ezekwesili and others. Olubadan, Oyo government appeals judgment.
Let's quickly look at the editorial because I think we have very few time. Saraki's call, governance and the 2019 elections. That's the editorial on, of course, the New Telegraph. And the crux of the editorial, according to the Senate President, is that it's right there in quotes, re-election for an incumbent government in a free and fair setting revolves around performance, delivery, and the satisfaction of the people.
That's right. That's the much that we can take. There are other headlines, as we said, on the front pages of the papers. Let's take a short break now.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
I was distressed to notice that some of the comments, especially in the social media, have crossed our national red lines by daring to question our collective existence as a nation. This is a step too far.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Cold and flu can spread through the contact of hands. And in such situations, I can't risk falling ill. So I recommend Dettol, as it protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs. That's why I want to be Dettol sure. Dettol, be 100%.
The time has come for Nigeria to take her rightful place in world sports with the first national grassroots sports festival to discover and prepare sport talents and develop future world champions for Nigeria. The festival date is 3rd to 10th March 2018. Venue is the National Stadium, Abuja, packages A and B. This is the opportunity for you to promote your brand through the festival. For broadcast sponsorship, which include live broadcasts, highlight shows, and TV fans show, contact the Chairman, Chief Coordinator, Angelo Peter I. Elosia, or Nick Oyushi. Organizers, Grassroots International Sports Academy and LOP Worldwide Television. Endorsed by the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports Development. Broadcast partner, NTA.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words. Run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, welcome back. And if you just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We are reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, for us to commence the first subject matter for discussion today, just remember that on Tuesday, former President Olusegun Obasanjo issued a widely circulated statement asking incumbent President Muhammadu Buhari not to contest the 2019 election. We have a guest with us here this morning to take a look at the matters arising from that letter. Claire?
Indeed, let's welcome a legal practitioner. Of course, he's a well-known face here on Good Morning Nigeria, but of course we've not had him for some time now. Olukayode Ajulo is here with us. Good to see you again after some time off.
Yeah, good morning.
All right, let's begin by looking at in content and context. How do you see the former president's letter, advisory or basically critical?
Well, the letter, we have to be sincere with ourselves, is more like aggregate of opinion. And I should say this, that I'm not surprised. Not surprised in the sense that since last year, the letter has been there. That is why I'm so surprised that some people, they were saying they're a little bit moted, they don't even know how to reply that. That is one thing. But one thing I will want us to know very well is this. The letter is more like an advice which you and I may give to the president. But one issue that I'm a little bit against is the fact that it should not be seen more like somebody saying, don't do this, particularly when we did not take into consideration what the Constitution of Nigeria is saying, particularly when it comes for anybody to contest election. With our Constitution today, whosoever that is allowed to contest can do that. But what matters most is Nigerian people to now decide this is the person to head the Nigerian government. But for only one person to say, oh, this is what it is, and everybody is just yesterday, people seem to have gone into hysteria to raise issue out of it, and that is it shouldn't have been. It should not.
Well, this is not altogether surprising in terms of approach. We saw this when former President Olusegun Obasanjo, also on the eve of the 2015 election, that's at least a full clear year before the 2015 election, he also wrote a publicly circulated letter to former President Goodluck Jonathan, itemizing what he thought were the ills of the country at the time and asking him to honor certain agreements and so on and so forth. Then President Goodluck Jonathan also took time off to reply to that letter. But in terms of context, and as Claire was indicating, is this normally the best approach to discuss or proffer advice to an incumbent president, considering that he himself had also previously been on that seat?
Well, it depends on the way we look at it. One thing I want us to know is that everybody are entitled to their opinion. Though some of us may raise the issue that, particularly being the former president, particularly having, let me call it, the outline of the incumbent, particularly knowing that if you want to see the incumbent, you can easily advise him. To me, it is more like playing to Gary. We have to be sincere about that first. Then again, what happened are these issues, particularly when you see that there is one between electing to go to the process of governance than to look at the structure itself. I would have thought that if we want to discuss it, because we need to say this, most of the time you find out that he mentioned virtually most of the past leaders. This one they failed, that one has failed, this one has failed, and I'm beginning to believe one thing, that if care is not taken, even bringing an angel to rule Nigeria, you find out that the same will still be the same result. Why? Because most of the time you see our leaders talking more about process. Unfortunately, the president even talked about process during his New Year address to Nigeria. But the question is this: the structure is faulty. We have to agree on that. Until we fix this structure, we will continue to sing this song here and there. That is why sometimes some of us, though we may complain, we may raise issue, but by the time you look at the structure, you complain, you continue to see that.
Now that you've talked about structure, if you look at again the context and content other issues that the letter by the former president raised. Reactions are that, and here people always refer to the popular common saying that he who must cast, the aspersion must always come with, equity. Now, how do you analyze, other contexts of issues that the president had raised?
Well, like I mentioned from the beginning, what the issue he raised is not a new thing. It's more like it's not like aggregate of all the critiques of everybody, particularly who have something against the president. And that is why I said it's more like aggregate of what the A and B has been saying. But to me, I don't think that is what we need to face particularly now, because that one has been settled. The issue here is that there are some issues that need to be addressed, and I believe that even if there should be anybody that should say that, it shouldn't be the former president. Particularly, though many people may say that because he has a clout, but I believe what stop you from telling the president in your one way or the other? And again, another thing I noticed in the letter, which is not that palatable, is the way he put it, that is that he's making a magisterial order.
But this is typical of the former president's
which will not be. And again, we have to know one thing. Nigeria is a republic. It's not a banana republic. Nigeria is an estate belonging to people, not someone's barrack that you can just give an order and it should be. One thing I believe that should happen is this: if the president wants to contest, let him contest. But the sole right, the sole power to allow anybody to rule Nigeria should still lies with the people, not that we now create some.
I'm wondering, legal practitioner Kare Ajulo, one point that some commentators have drawn attention to in all of this is to say, in the Constitution, 1999 as amended, there is a provision for the Council of State, which is an advisory body. Is it, and of course the Council of State normally will be, the meeting of the Council of State normally will be summoned by the incumbent president to table particular matters for advice. Now, when you take the totality of the issues raised by former President Olusegun Obasanjo, this time around, and what happened also in the case of Goodluck Jonathan, is it necessarily the case that perhaps the channel of communication between former presidents and then the incumbent, that those channels do not appear to be sufficient, even with the existence of the Council of State?
I don't want to believe that it's not sufficient. Though Obasanjo is our father, there's a way that you have to be circumspect in castigating what an elder does, particularly in this kind of issue. But it's so clear that I want to believe that if to really advise, to have a genuine advice, he should have a channel of passing that channel, not to overhear the polity, not to raise some issue. Because unfortunately, this is the issue of Obasanjo letters that everybody is discussing. What is happening in Benue, all the major issues seem to have taken the front burner. And I'm afraid some people are taking the psyche of Nigerian people, or this mob mentality that everybody jump into fray and start raising issues, and because this letter has been used to douse some critical and important issue that we're supposed to be discussing. And to me, I find this is a very sad situation where a simple thing, you know how to really reach your fellow, let me call them, because I still believe they still have where they are. Obasanjo was in Abuja last week. We saw him virtually everywhere. You can easily do that and plane to Calgary. I'm afraid this is what is being happened.
But that suggested in the letter is sort of coalition, as going forward. What's your reaction to that?
The question is this: I want to believe that all the content of the letter and the intent is premeditated. This issue of coalition, you find out that instead for the president to tell us that I'm having a party on ground, talking and using the Nigerian mentality to believe that there is a third force, there is another coalition, which everybody should come together. All that one, to me, I believe it is more of one funny exercise and conjecture, particularly when it comes to the fact that what we should be discussing, like I mentioned something earlier, that even if you bring an angel, the same issue will come right from the beginning. We've been having these same issues every time. Why don't you, even if you must say anything, discuss the structure. How do we fix the structure so that whosoever that we find in the realms of the affairs will be able to really work and rule well.
Do you think this has become, this kind of advice, you know, it has become pertinent for this kind of advice, you know, given, you know, the issues happening around the country?
I don't think so. I don't think so, particularly when you find out that everybody have been saying this. Raising all this is more like playing to Gary. That's the way I...
When you say playing to the Gary, you've used that phrase, expression repeatedly in your response to some of the questions that we asked. This is just before we sign you off. Can you also factor in the style of Obasanjo himself? Because it's not just doing this one now under a democratic dispensation. We saw this in the late 1980s when General Ibrahim Babangida was military president and the adverse effects of the structural adjustment program had kicked in. And Obasanjo, you know, issued a public statement then saying that STAP should have a human face. I remember that the Chief of General Staff, the late Admiral Ahom, then replied politely to say, yes, we will give SAP not just a human face, human neck, human chest, and human everything. So this is OBJ style. Does that therefore mitigate the issue of playing to the gallery, as you have said?
Well, you know, I agree with you. It's more of a style, and that style, I think we should know that it's patently playing to Gary. That has been like a signature of Obasanjo, and we should take it as that this is the way it has been, and this is the way it will continue to be as long as the man lives.
Well, it is as long as you said that. But the point that Claire raised with regard to one of the issues embedded in the former President Obasanjo's letter has to do with the current political arrangement. We recall that Obasanjo, as it were, doesn't belong to any political party. Yeah. But we're talking of a third force. You, of course, you've been in the trenches, as it were, and the election year is already declared open, as it were, with all of the things that we are hearing on the INEC timetable and so on and so forth. Is there sufficient time for a third force to really coagulate and then be a sufficient third force to the pre-existing political parties?
Yes, I want to believe people are genuine. If people are genuine, I want to believe that of course you can have third force, and I must be sincere, there has been some, because unfortunately one thing that surprises me now recently is that much more than about 3 or 4 groups now, everybody choose to call themselves top force. I've been approached by many groups. They will tell you they are top force. Even yesterday I jokingly asked, when can we now have the real top force? Because now you see any splinter group will call themselves top force, this one top force. Now the question is this: when are we going to have the real top force? That's what we should be talking about. Not that top force will not be, that one is so certain, but the real one, when are we going to have that? That is the issue, because everybody seems to like the name third force. Obasanjo tuna is using third force, and I'm very sure another man tomorrow will wake up to say we are talking of third force. Now the question is this: how many third force are we going to have to salvage Nigeria?
All right, that's the third force to challenge the incumbent administration and the main opposition, PDP. Let's take reactions from our viewers who have sent in their tweets. Abubakar Baba Shehu has this tweet: I think Buhari needs to be encouraged, not discouraged in these hard times. Buhari needs a second term to finish what he started.
All right, and Abdul Musa tweets, while I share some of the issues raised by OBJ on the performance of the Buhari administration, I still believe President Buhari can make some amendments. It's not enough for someone to say he should not seek for re-election. Let PMB and Nigerians decide.
And this is from Bello Abdullahi. Bello Abdullahi tweets, now you asking a sitting president not to contest is already an admission of fear that he will emerge victorious should he contest. If you are saying President Muhammadu Buhari has failed and unfit to contest again, then present your candidate and mobilize in his favor.
All right, and John Otuchere tweets, this is a candid advice from an experienced elder statesman. God won't come down and speak to you. He will send someone to speak to you. Buhari should heed to the advice.
All right, those are the tweets that we can take in the meantime. We'd like to appreciate legal practitioner Kayode Ajulo. Thanks a lot for your perspective.
Thank you very much.
All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with developing appropriate skills for the future workforce.
NTA College Jos, an affiliate of the prestigious Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, is organizing a one-month short course on online news reporting. The course is scheduled for 5th February to 16th March 2018 at the NTA College premises, Rayfield, Jos. The cost for workshop is 100,000 naira per participant, accommodation inclusive. This course will be targeting professional journalists and those wishing to pursue courses in this field. The course will be teaching participants the act of using mobile phone cameras and digital cameras to generate reports and how these news stories, photos and videos can be produced or even published straight from the field, making the news production process faster and more efficient. Take advantage of this opportunity. NTA College, training you to be the best you want to be. For inquiries, contact the academic office on 0806 908 9807 0816 956 1843.
Why don't you people sell imported materials here? As beautiful as the shop is.
Auntie, buying foreign goods does not help our economy. Neither does it boost local production. And the good thing is Nigerian-made products are high quality. Really? And to make Nigeria great again. That is why I only sell made in Nigeria products. Because change begins with me.
I'm convinced. Change begins with me too.
Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, welcome back. If you've just joined us, we're moving on to our, of course, main topic for discussion this morning. And again, just for a reminder, we're looking at developing appropriate skills for future workforce. And for that, let's join our correspondent, Timothy Yusuf, to provide us with the background report.
According to the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, unemployment rate in Nigeria remains a challenge, rising from 13.9% in the third quarter of 2016 to 14.2% in the fourth quarter same year. The Labour Statistics report further shows that between January and September 2017, about 4.07 million Nigerians became unemployed. Despite the nation's efforts at turning out graduates in their numbers on a yearly basis in various fields of endeavor, but this is of no significance. This is the story of Nigeria and indeed the entire African continent, as it is next to India in unemployment rate. Experts believe that requisite skills are simply the tools required to solve this age-long monster. The research contained in an article titled Africa and the Future Digital Workforce by Martins Heil in the May 2016 edition of Financial Nigeria, a development and finance journal, states that by 2025, private bankers and wealth managers will be replaced by a set of rules. Artificial intelligence will replace lawyers, accountants, and statisticians. These are identified as new skills that will drive future digital enterprises. But the question is, where is the place of Africa and her preparedness for the digital economy? To this end, 10 skills for the future workforce have been identified. They are sense-making, social intelligence, novel and adaptive thinking, cross-cultural competency, and computational thinking. Others are new media literacy, transdisciplinarity, design mindset, cognitive load management, and virtual collaboration. African companies are therefore expected to henceforth develop digital skills to overcome their capacity deficit, which is believed by many to have been hindering African development and even the implementation of the AU Agenda 2063. What must Africa do rightly, Nigeria inclusive, to tackle the current capacity deficit on the continent? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria are set to provide answers shortly.
Thank you very much, Timothy Yusuf, for that background report. Now, there are two guests with us here in the Abuja studios, and two others will be joining us via Skype from remote locations. First, we'd like to welcome all the way from Yola, because a familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria, Dr. Umar Bindri is Secretary to the Adamawa State Government. And Dr. Bindri, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Always happy to be here.
All right, and then also with us here in the studios is Francis Okumagba. Okumagba is Managing Director of iSkill Limited. It's a company that promotes knowledge management. Mr. Okumagba, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Claire.
All right, Kingsley, let's now go to South Africa, and joining us via Skype is again another familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria, Tokpe Togo. He's an expert on skills development and job creation, as well as CEO Cognitive Advisory. Thank you very much for joining us. All right, and also joining us still from South Africa, or UK, I beg your pardon, via Skype, Professor Anthony Akila. Professor Akila is the Director, Center for International Advanced and Professional Studies. Professor Akila, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Akila.
All right, gentlemen. Excuse me, it's a cold morning today, Claire, in the Federal Capital Territory, and I had my tea before I came on air. So, Claire and I'm sure Dr. Bennett, that doesn't affect you, and Okuma, but that also doesn't affect you. Well, gentlemen, let's begin. We listened to the background report by our correspondent a moment ago, it taking off some of the skill sets that will be required for the future workforce. Let's try to, first of all, contextualize all of this. Where the world is at the moment, where Nigeria is in terms of the global economy, of course, relating to work and the skill set required to function in that environment. Before we now begin to proceed and project to what kind of skills will be needed in future. Perhaps we should begin with the two gentlemen who are with us via Skype. First, Professor Tony Killer, Professor Anthony Killer, Director, Center for International Advanced and Professional Studies. Now, the impression always was there that with the advent of information technology, the world was now in the information age. Is this the basis of the new skill set that are being required, or there are other forces driving it? And how is this manifesting in industry, in the workplace, and then in teaching and learning?
Well, let us put it this way. You always require new skills because the life of a man continues evolution. So the things we used yesterday, the things we needed yesterday are always different from what we need today. And a lot of times, the things we invent, the solutions we find to problems, create more skills to be needed. So that is why, as a child, you learn to play with toys. Then when you grow up, you learn to eat with cutleries. And as you move on, then you learn to ride, you learn to drive, and then you learn to fly. You know, it's just a continuum. There is no big news or big shock in the fact that in the future, the skills required will be different. The question and the way to look at it is that as a collective, as a society, a community, or a country, or as families indeed, what are we doing to equip ourselves with these skills? You know, are we specializing in one area, or are we doing a general thing? Are we doing it individually? Are we doing it as a group?
Professor Killer, thank you for your opening remarks. Let's also take Tokpe Togo from South Africa, who is an expert on skills development and job creation. From your research and interactions with maybe firms, companies, basically operating in Nigeria, what do you find a gap, a skills gap, you know, in those companies, and how might that be affecting the operations?
Can you take that question again? I didn't hear you clearly.
From your research and interactions, basically looking at firms and outfits here in Nigeria, do we have a skills gap, and how might that be impacting on the operations?
I hope we're not. I hope we're not having Claire. We're not having audio challenges with Tokma in South Africa. Just before we delve into, if you will, before we delve into our current experience with regard to available skills and then available work or what the workplace requires, perhaps we should still deal in a general manner from where Professor Killer was speaking. That's what we're bringing in Okumagba now to tell us. He says, look, well, human progress has always been one, as I said, a march toward the light. What was used in the 18th century is not necessarily what is being used today, but you still have human beings who are around the place. So what are we seeing in terms of skill set and emerging demand from industry and therefore the workplace?
The truth about it is that Nigeria continues to be the investment bride of the world, because in my own perspective, I see all the resources that we need. But our educational system does not support innovation and continuous improvement in the use of technology and all that in our system. The number of graduates that we see come out of university today are glorified clerks who don't know how to even read and write. So employing those people is already a challenge compared to when you look at where we are going and where the world is today. There are a lot of universities out there who sort of graduates who don't know how to use the internet. But they are very good at using soft skills and apps that you have on the telephone and all that. We need to do something about our educational system. Currently, we employ, we train, and we interact with a lot of young people. And we see them when they come out of university. The question you ask yourself is, can this guy actually function in the space that we have, in the environment where we provide the employment that we're talking about? No. Because a lot of them have programs, education, qualifications that they cannot apply. Get an English graduate, for instance, for employment, and get him to write a comprehension. You will have to repeat everything yourself again and give to that individual. Now the world is going digital now. Everybody, the language of business in the world today is digital. We don't have in our university system where we have a primary exposition to how people can actually apply themselves in that environment. Very soon we're going to have a system where we don't need secretaries anymore. We're going to have a system where a computer will be thinking of what we need to do. You can actually get an app and put Google and ask a question and you get the answer. So a lot of the thinking and a lot of things that we are used to doing might not be required.
Okay, earlier on, Kingsley, thank you for, putting down that perspective. But basically, my question, was like, fine, if we're looking at developing skills for future workforce, we want to know at the moment, what are those skills? If Nigeria has a population of 170, that's a projection by United Nations, million people, are we lacking in the potential skills? If so, what is the impact of the deficit?
Thank you very much, Claire. You see, when you discuss these kind of social issues about Nigeria, it's very, very confusing, because for you to go to the future, you must have come from the past and you're operating in the present. This is the value chain. And you see, three things are very clear in life, which is the jobs, the professionalism, everything is life. If the quality of your life dictates whatever has happened to you. First, if you have gotten the right workforce, the right education, the right institutional landscape, you will have a low absolute poverty incidence. People will eat, people will drink, people will sleep in nice houses, and so on. This is the first primary function of all these things that we're talking about. If you're talking about any other thing and poverty is too high, it will not work, like Nigeria is showing you. If you work on your absolute poverty incidence to the extent that people are generically living well, you can't stop there. You have to go to the next level where people must have skills. people must have competencies. People using skills and competencies must do jobs. I have not seen a country where people have work and they work for 8 hours or 40 hours per week and they still have time to cause trouble. You know, so the whole system will now start, you know, the middle class kind of system. But you cannot stop at this as well. It is not sustainable. You have to move to the last level where the skills and the competencies create institutions that can last beyond you. So that you see that in some European countries, there is no elections, but the system is moving. You know, you can't go to the UK now and start asking, where can I buy pirated software? That's not part of the dictionary. You can't go to Japan and start saying, oh, our own enrollment percentage is 50%. They don't know what you're talking about because every child must go to school. You know what I mean? So everything you do have to take consideration of these three. Coming back to our country, as we speak, if you go to the Bureau of Statistics, you will see that absolute poverty incidence in Nigeria is between 60 to 70%. Meaning, out of every 100 Nigerians, 60 to 70% are dwelling below whatever level the United Nations have. This is the issue. So what is the future for this country? What are we doing now to do this? And as he said, education is an index, but I always use my mother as an example. This is a woman that has never entered a classroom. So formal education, 0. You know what I mean? She had one hand. So in terms of physical disability, you can also take. She's total housewife. You know, so whatever people are saying about her, but this same woman can milk a cow, she can make cheese, she can make yogurt, she can manufacture soap, she can extract oil out of groundnuts. A typical high-powered chemical engineering and mechanical engineering person. But yet, she died poor. Meaning, the culture of entrepreneurship has not gone into her. So, the future is about entrepreneurship. If Nigeria wants to survive, we have to, in our schooling system, in our social system, in our religious bodies, in our traditional system, entrepreneurship culture must enter to the extent that a boy, whether it's an Igbo boy in Nsukka, will start thinking, hey, there is an opportunity for leather industry in the red goats of Sokoto. But for that to happen, we have to change some mechanics within our education system. And that should be subject matter of another point.
All right, Dr. Omar Brinde, thank you very much. Let's go back again to Tokwe Togun, who is with us via Skype from South Africa. We understand the lines are clear now. Let's talk about Togo again. Let's get from you a general overview of the global demand in terms of skill and what the workforce ordinarily should have in getting to that job environment.
Thank you. The skills requirements globally are moving in the direction of people who are adaptable, people who have problem-solving skills, and a developed sense of emotional intelligence. These requirements are not far removed from where technology is taking us in terms of all the disruptions that are happening. Those are already the requirements that employers have today. And the gap that we have in Nigeria and substantially across the continent, the roots of those gaps are in our approach to education, where our curriculum is still based on rote learning. Whereas what we need to be doing is equipping people with problem-solving skills, with the ability to adapt seamlessly to changing situations and circumstances, and also with a foundation for lifelong learning, because the disruptions that we are witnessing will require people to continue to be learning new things. Those disruptions will be making some skills redundant. And as they make those skills redundant, they also create the need, as Dr. Killer had said, Professor Killer, for new skills. But do we have the kind of people who are tuned to continuous learning. That's the bigger challenge that we face with our approach to education. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Professor. Sorry, Topetobi there. Let's again bring in Professor Kila joining us from UK. Now, we've identified some of the skills area that might be needed, you know, of course, for future workforce. But referring to our curriculum, we've had several, you know, revised curricula, of course, including vocational and entrepreneurial skills. So where lies the misalignment? Okay, Professor Kila, I'm asking, where lies the misalignment? Because we've had, over time, we've had revision or what I call adjustment in our school's curricula. Right now, we have the curricula, of course, providing for vocational and entrepreneurial skills. So where lies the problem?
You see, the problem is this. I guess you're talking as a country, Nigeria, not the world. Yes, as a country, we have not done what elsewhere we called outcome-based education.
Yeah.
The education we have is sort of general, is static, and in some cases is, you know, damnly outright annoying. Systems that work, it is not casual. Some wise people sit down together years ahead to say, in the next 10, 20, 50 years, what are the skills that will be needed for us to catch up and maybe rule the world in areas of technology, in areas of IT, or in areas of agriculture, anything. And you do what is called a skills audit to see what you have and what is missing. And based on that, you then decide where you put your money and when you put infrastructures to train people. So, as I'm speaking to you now, as I'm talking to you, I'm speaking from Cambridge in England. And there is a whole department that meets every once a month to look at what we have and what is missing.
It's unfortunate that we've lost the audio there from Professor Kila, but we'll get back to him once that is cleared up. But, gentlemen, I want us to again zero in on some of the skills that have been said to be required for the future. One, Tokwe speaking to us from South Africa, was talking about adaptability, problem solving, emotional intelligence, and then from our background report, we also talked about multicultural competency, as well as a foundation for lifelong learning. Let me put this to Francis Okumagba. Some of the points you talked about, sometimes, you know, is it the case that we are probably too harsh with ourselves when we say you have a graduate of English who cannot do X, Y, Z? There are graduates from Nigerian universities who are as brilliant as anywhere you can find, as we can find them anywhere else in the world. What is missing? What do we need to do with regard to building a foundation for lifelong learning? Let's begin with that.
The foundation starts at home with the parents, with the leadership that they experience. Young people emulate what they see and what they experience. We evolve a style of leadership at home that makes it impossible for parents to actually interact with their children. A lot of these children are left in the hands of nannies. Their experience and their exposure is to nannies because most of these parents go out of their homes to actually seek a source of living. Now the leadership, the type of leadership we have today are leaders who don't present things that you can copy. Because people also copy from role models. They create role models from the leaders they see in their environment. A lot of them see them not add value to what they are doing. Back to the education system. How many universities are supposed to be research centers where you churn out a lot of things? We have a lot of professors in Nigeria. How many research experience have evolved things of doing things differently? I repeat, if you see the graduates that we are churning out from the universities today, Nigeria is over-schooled. We have too many universities churning graduates that are not graduates. The people who brought education into Nigeria, they don't go to universities the way we go to universities anymore. They are creating more enabling environment for people to understand skills that they really need to express themselves, to create things, to be innovative. Vocational schools are lacking in. You talk about vocational and entrepreneurship centers. What is the percentage of that to what we have? Very soon you have some people that are reading psychology, all sort of professions and all that. How do they apply in society today? What do you employ them to do? We have doctors who cannot apply business on the business side. And you want to create entrepreneurs? I will give you simple examples of things that we are still doing that have not changed. If we really have the right set of education, we will not be where we are today. Do you know that sugarcane is still packaged the way our great-grandfathers packaged sugarcane? Who did not go to school? We are still selling sugarcane on wheelbarrows. Not hygienic, not presentable. It's still like that. Today, with technology, you can actually start a business without a dime in your pocket. We still are agitating. Our mindset is let's look for money to start a business. You open a shop, you rent the shop, you will pay for the wares that you have in the shop. You will employ somebody, you will get generator and all that. That same ware that you are selling, somebody who has the exposure and the right disposition and the exposure with ICT will take up your product and take the picture and take from experts, 5 different experts, and put it on the internet and put the price there and put his number, phone number. It will reach out to thousands of people than the person that opens the shop. Nigerians are still thinking in the old ways because our education system does not expose us to the new ways of doing things. I just told you how somebody wants to open a business who is looking for 1 million naira, 2 million naira to start a business, can start the business immediately without a dime in his pocket because he puts it on the internet and start using it. But the Nigerians are using it to do selfie, to showcase themselves. So we need a lot of reorientation in our people.
Fine. And that
the question. Sorry, I would like us to address this subject. When you say creating a foundation for lifelong learning, Dr. Bindre, what does that mean? If you say, I mean, the purpose, the reason, what you learned 30 years ago is not what you have today. What you learned, what you studied 35 years ago is not what you have today. So, do we have a challenge with creating the right foundation for lifelong learning? Because that's the purpose of education, by the way.
Well, yeah, I think so. Unfortunately, everybody seems to zoom onto the education system, and it is true. The formal education system, the average is you go to primary school, you go to secondary school, you do university, and then you graduate. That is a porous basket. When you go to primary school, there are some that drop out, and then some will move on. And then secondary school, some will drop out until you reach university. But you will have young people at the same age. Some have dropped out of university, some have not even gone anywhere. This education system, as far as I am concerned, in this country need to have a shock treatment strategy. And what I mean, I'll give you just one tiny example. In those days, 60s, 70s, 80s, even when we graduated, those first generation universities were globally recognized universities. Very cosmopolitan, very high intensity, and they had a focus. You want to study medicine, go to Ibadan. When you want to study engineering, go to Ahmadu Bello University area and so on and so forth. Today, if you go to University of Ibadan, 90% of the staff and students are all Yoruba people. You go to Nsukka, it's exactly the same thing. You go to Ahmadu Bello University. That has subtracted something out of Nigerians. This is the factory where you have young people within their teens and the 20s who should think Nigeria, who should understand that there are different foods, different clothing, different cultures, who should travel to visit their friends during holidays, and so on. All of a sudden, we subtracted all that from young people, and then we blocked them to start thinking in exactly the same way. The same food eaten at primary school will go to secondary school, will go to university, the same thinking, and it comes back to what he's saying. What has to happen is that universities, and we have over 154 of them in Nigeria, must graduate from the traditional literacy education level that the colonial people left us. Universities were set up to graduate people, to help them, to take records, to speak English and so on. To the extent, till today, we still feel like when you're speaking nice English, you must have graduated from Ibadan. That kind of very primordial whatever.
Lagos, I graduated from Lagos.
So, you know what I mean? So, we have not managed to change our education system to be entrepreneurial. All these efforts by, I remember Professor Rukaya from Jigawa that introduced the entrepreneurship. You can't teach entrepreneurship. It's a skill. You build it up with time. So universities must turn to become not just schools for teaching. They must become technically sharp as centers of excellence for experimentation, evolution of data and facts. They must become technically sharp to become entrepreneurial, to survive. And they must become tools for collaboration, to the extent that when the president is traveling to other countries, you must see 3 or 4 professors of highest caliber going with the president, so that discussions are highly technical. If such universities happen in Nigeria, then you will start breeding out young people who are very morally sharp, who are entrepreneurs because they've seen everything. They have bits of managerial and organizational skills, and they can be able to look at the opportunities in our country. Yes, the solar energy in the north, the goats, as I said before, in the northwest, then the timber, and then be able to take advantage of that. And that is what science and technology is all about, is how you get facts, transform those facts into solutions, and you apply it and you solve your problems. Then finance will come in. But in this country, because we are on the wrong level of education, anywhere you go to, they will say it's money that they don't have. The number one is money, and that is wrong.
Let's bring in Tope Togo from South Africa. Tope, now the thinking is that focus should be on how to get secondary and tertiary students to acquire skills in the areas of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEMs as it is called. But today in Nigeria, you have hundreds of thousands of students, aspiring students in higher institutions, applying for courses in the humanities and the arts. So how do we begin to impact the needed skills for future workforce?
Thank you. The foundation is in the basic education system. By the time we get to the secondary school, we've lost quite a bit at that stage. We need to start from the very basic level, and at the heart of promoting STEM is how we teach mathematics. The reason many people go into humanities and all those other courses is simply because their foundation in mathematical studies is weak. And progressively, as things get more complicated, they are not able to cope. So for us to promote STEM, and we do have to promote STEM, we are a country like Nigeria and across Africa generally, we are a country with we are a continent with a huge infrastructure deficit. We are a continent with 60% of the arable land that is left for the whole wide world. But we also have a huge food importation bill. To solve these problems, we need technical capacity. We are not producing enough of those. So we have to go back to how we teach mathematics at the very basic foundation for promoting STEM education. Let me also very quickly touch on the foundations for, because all these things are interconnected, the foundations for lifelong learning. They are similar to the things we need to do to get people into STEM, the STEM courses. We have an education that has a primitive outcome. It basically equips people to be clerks, to be not to be able to process, to have independent thinking. the three things we need to get right, and it's got to spread across the whole spectrum of education, from basic to higher education. We must incorporate elements around self-awareness, getting people to be aware of their strengths and their weaknesses. We've got to be able to measure outcomes in terms of critical thinking. And we've got to be able to equip people with the capacity to process large volumes of information and make sense of that information. If we have those three things right, STEM becomes easier. People getting into entrepreneurship becomes easier. Getting job ready, being able to prepare themselves or change with the changes in the environment also becomes a lot easier. Thank you.
Well, Tokma, still with you, just before we once again lose the audio connection, but you're very clear this time. Before we, I'd like you to dwell further on some of those critical skills that we're talking about. Soft skills, obviously, critical thinking, problem solving, information processing, self-awareness, and emotional intelligence. Now, this is not necessarily something you would need only in STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, and maths. The advanced societies that we refer to, they still teach the humanities and social sciences. Anybody that says that psychology is an easy subject would know that actually you need science courses to qualify for admission into psychology. So what are we looking at now in terms of problem solving, in terms of critical thinking? You talked earlier, I know you talked earlier about rote learning, which is a major challenge for us in and out. So problem solving, how do we begin to apply it to some of those areas of critical need to enable our products, the products of our educational system, get a firm footing in the world so that they can compete?
Okay, I'll have a go at it. You'll please pardon me if I don't fully cover because it was fading in and out. How do we get those things into our education systems? First and foremost, as Prof had said earlier, our curriculum is static. Nowhere in the world should curricula be static. There has to be a process for making regular changes to the curriculum. Second is the capacity of the intermediaries that we have, our teaching force. We need to equip them with modern methods on an ongoing basis. And these are not things that it's not rocket science. How do we assess? If we're going to embed critical thinking, if we're going to embed problem solving, we've got to change our testing methods and how we assess students. Basically, right now we reward students for their ability to memorize what they've written down, what somebody has written down, the ability to memorize and recount. That's what we reward. But if we're going to incorporate elements like critical thinking and problem solving, we have to change how we assess. We have to change the context of how they write examinations. That should include exercises. It should include field work. It should require people to work in teams. And that's where they build emotional intelligence. When we then get to critical thinking, we sort of should move the needle from asking people or rewarding or giving them marks for remembering something that they read. We want them to interrogate the subject matter and we want to hear their own voices. We need to be able to ask people to analyze. When we do this on an ongoing basis and we are gradually increasing the complexity level, then people's ability, students' ability to interrogate issues and do sense making and draw their own conclusions is enhanced. And those are the things that employers are looking for. Again, when you will remember that in the past, you could graduate from university and go into a job straight, you are prepared. Then after some time, companies started to do 6-month managerial training programs. Now they've extended those programs to close to 2 years. And this things that we expect the education system to produce, those are the things that they are taught by organizations. Those are the skills that people master when they first start working. So if the corporate world is able to do that successfully by taking what has come from the education system and bringing them up to the required standard, we should work backwards and infuse our education system with some of the strategies that have worked in the corporate sector. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tope. Let's bring in Professor Kila right now. Professor Kila, let's buy in to global experience and, of course, model for success now. What do you think, what kind of approach or strategy or model would... Oh, well, we're sorry, we've lost the audio from Professor Kila. But back to Dr. Bindu. Judging from, you know, global experience and all that, and of course you have been a boss of an institution that is technically driven. What model or approach or methodology might companies or institutions, you know, use to train or provide training, you know, for necessary for future workforce?
Well, is the ecosystem approach, as Mama Diaspora will tell you, right? You have to bring in so many things at the same place. I'll just give you one example to answer that question. If you look at what we call as the 21st century universities anywhere in the world, you'll find that a university, like any other university, has a campus, it has professors, it has laboratories, it has everything. Every Nigerian university has this. But then you find that those 21st century universities are repatriating money back to the university and even helping other people, while our universities are still waiting for government budget. So something is wrong somewhere. The reason is because when you go to most 21st century universities, you will find that they have created an additional tentacle that relaxes the system. There's something called as science and technology parks. Most of these universities have got these institutional things that helps you to be a professor teaching in the university and also be an MD of a technology company next to each other. Those are the secrets of all the Silicon Valley Research Triangle, all these science and technology parks. The same parks practicalize and commercializes the outputs of the university. So the student who is doing research on applications or some kind of physical technology has an opportunity to practicalize it straight to the market next door in a company. So as a student, you are breeding organizational and managerial skills, technology evolution and innovation skills instantly. Same thing, the intellectual property regime. These universities have matured the art of transforming the science, which is the data, the facts, the discoveries, into property. So it is invisible, but it is property, with the certificate of occupancy, for example, as a patent.
What about those who are presently gainfully employed? What should employers do?
Well, the thing is that if they're employed, then they have to now, if they have not been trained this way, they have to now be gradually on-the-job training in the relevant area that can actually help the companies to... Everything looks towards innovation in the sense that innovation is the resource for creative entrepreneurship. You have to look at what the customer needs and then you supply it. So conclusively with what the professor said, you know, when you talk about STEM, people think when you're talking science, you're talking biology, physics, and so on. That is not true. It is not true, because the people who are good in branding are the people who connect the customer to the product. And these are not natural scientists. And so you don't have to be good in mathematics, or you don't have to be a dropout in mathematics, and then you take up history or arts or whatever. That is not true. Your passion. I
read philosophy.
Fantastic. I mean, look at you where you are today. You are an international star, if you know what I mean. But you pay me later. But anyway, but you see, the thing is, what I'm trying to say is that the thinking of our students or of our young people to have a career is the way we need to go. All these changes of curriculum and teaching and whatever must model the students to start thinking, hey, I want to be a broadcaster. I want to be a Dangote. I want to be a business. I want to be somebody who is an NGO operator. In this school, if you have this, Everything will be molded gradually. But for now, it is just, I go to school and I get a certificate and then I start looking for a job with the government, which is not very good.
All right. Dr. Bindre, thank you very much. Just before we're bringing again Mr. Francis Okumagba, we understand that the audio connection to the Skype from the UK, that's in Cambridge in England, Professor Anthony Killer, we understand is okay now. Professor Killer, if you can hear me clearly, and if you also listen to what Tokwe Togun was saying from South Africa, I would like you to respond again to some of those issues pertaining to the skills that are required for the future. Problem-solving skills, critical thinking, self-awareness, information processing, and emotional intelligence. How are these grafted into the curriculum, or how are these grafted into the learning experiences in other jurisdictions?
Well, these, can you hear me? Okay, brilliant. You see, these set of skills that Tokwe has magnificently listed out there, they're functional skills which are embedded in general learning. You do not really sit somebody down and say, today we're going to teach you problem solving or give you emotional intelligence. What you do is that when you teach maths, rather than the usual way of saying sit down and x plus 2y equal to z and memorize it, you will give practical examples to show, for example, that when you say x plus 2y equal to z, what we mean is, say for example you want to plan a party and you need to print IVs. You will let students understand the x is a fixed price that you pay for setting up, and the y is the variable cost for the amount of papers you print. So you multiply that by 2, add it to the x which is fixed, and that will give you your cost. You see, that way of teaching maths makes it alive, makes it interesting, and people will then see maths. Children, adults, or any level of students would then see maths as a way of solving problems and not a way of torturing people in the class. You will then also teach them to know that understanding how you feel, knowing how to express it, and understanding what your action has on other people is a kind of intelligence you need to acquire to be able to manage people better. And that is emotional intelligence, at least a part of it. We need to spend time on embedded skills that goes beyond just the mere curriculum week after week and week after week. We need to sit down and include all those things. Of course, to make maths lively, to make emotional intelligence attractive, you need teachers who are A, competent enough, B, who can inspire people. So you need to find teachers who are happy to be in the classroom. I've been a teacher for over 2 decades, and I feel very sad when I meet people and they say, what do you do? And they tell me, for now I'm teaching. So we need to eradicate that. Look for people who are competent, inspire them so that they can inspire, and inspire them by paying them well. So we can't escape that. And those are the way forward. And in everything we do, we need to make sure that everything we teach in the classroom, we're given the sense of you come inside here knowing less and you leave knowing more. You know, it's not that you're sent here because there was nobody to hold you at home, or just because you can't farm, so go to school. No. It is go to school so you can do anything in life better.
Thank you, Professor Kila. Again, let's bring in Tokwe Togun just before we take our tweet. Tokwe, a research conducted by a management training and consultancy provider, you know, says that in the next couple of years, over 500, to be specific now, million jobs will disappear. That's jobs that are existing today. And of course, a whole new set of jobs will begin to emerge, requiring new market space and all that. Can you let us in on some of those new emerging jobs and perhaps the strategies in the short and maybe long term that will begin to put us on the right path?
Okay, thank you. Technology is a major factor in disrupting the current way of doing things. It has always been a factor. It's always been a technological advance that takes some jobs out. But I think Professor Killer also mentioned this in his opening comment, that with every new advancement that takes some jobs out, it creates the conditions for newer jobs. I'll give you a practical example. A few years ago, there was nothing like Uber. Within the space of 4 or 5 years, Uber became a global machine that is disrupting transportation. It's gotten to a point where there is research now that says that it's possible car sales are going to drop because people won't feel the need to purchase their own cars. Those who are driving regular taxi cabs, as we speak, are being taken out of, they are being disintermediated completely from that market, and they are going to have to move on to other things. That's an example at a very basic level to illustrate what kind of jobs are we going to need when the robots take over. Those jobs, you see, those robots don't exist in isolation of a context and a set of circumstances. People are going to be manufacturing those robots. Software is going to be needed to get them to work effectively. Even the output of the robots will still need some human mediation, so some level of involvement. So we find that digital fluency will be gold standard in terms of requirements for every kind of job that is going to open up. Agriculture that is premised, that is basic today, is evolving with the use of technology. Farmers who are going to make success out of agriculture in the future will have to be technologically savvy, because there are now instruments, there are apps, there are technologies that can predict and measure rainfall and show the kind of output you would have from this soil type, so that we find that the application of that technology within that context ensures that we can eradicate some of the challenges that come, that we'll say are natural, that we didn't know about. Digital fluency, the ability to interact with technology, leverage technology. ICT will be a core requirement. It's a growing area that would help us, people like us in Africa, to leapfrog. Technology disintermediated banking in East Africa. There's a program called M-Pesa. It was the very first money transfer system developed in the whole wide world. And it came because there was a challenge of moving money into the rural areas. So that technology was developed in Africa. Maybe disintermediated some people who were doing the money transfer business, but it also created new opportunities. What kinds of jobs? We are still going to have the same kinds of jobs that we're doing, but we're going to be doing them in a higher productivity mode, and there's going to be a lot of technology infusion. We will still need pharmacists, I hope. I'm not sure that robots will do the research and development function, but everything will begin to be more skills intensive, higher capacity. And if I could add this bit in as well, the trend from the global arena that we measure to is that there are places where most of the work available demand or require high skills. We in Africa, we work mainly, with the exception of South Africa, Mauritius, and maybe Botswana. We basically work, most of the employees in our continent work in low-skilled environments. So skills, those same things we've spoken about, is going to be crucial. They are going to be crucial to doing almost anything. They will require a higher level of understanding of the ability to engage with technology. And we're also going to see a lot of fragmentation. And this is also coming because of technology. I'm sitting in Johannesburg. I'm Skyping in, same as Professor Kila, who's coming in from Cambridge. That is already affecting and influencing how work is done. Our understanding of what constitutes work will have to change. Many people are going to be independent operators. They're going to be working from home because technology is enabling them to do things. And they will be working for clients in Australia, in the US. So it's still emerging. We are seeing those requirements, but I'm not sure we are prepared effectively. We are preparing people effectively to meet those challenges. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much there for your perspective, and indeed for the others. I mean, the more the guests, Claire, the more they have spoken to this particular subject matter, the more, of course, you ask yourself, all right, so perhaps we need to speak to economic historians, you know, to tell us what happened when you had the Industrial Revolution and what the disruptions were. You also need industrial sociologists to help you analyze, you know, what happens in the workplace when there are disruptions. We have a number of tweets that have come in, but I don't know whether we'll take Okuma. Well, first, we get his closing thoughts, but we're honest. Let's take the tweets first, and you listen to the comments that our viewers are making, and then ask you a question before we wrap it up. Very interesting conversation. Olusegun Dosumo has this tweet. It says, for Africa to be rightly placed on the path of global digital landscape, Nigeria has to take the lead, else we are in trouble. It's a shame how we focus more on people's inabilities than their abilities. A whole lot of, quote, uneducated, unquote, Nigerians are brainy.
All right, and Billy Jack Solomon tweets, Nigeria's socio-economic future is dependent on skills development and quality education. Now, for our youths to acquire these skills, we must bridge the misalignment between current curriculum and industry needs.
Sonny Michael Omakoji has this tweet. It says, we must not confuse ourselves. The African continent is running a commodity economy, while other continents are running a knowledge-driven economy. We are certainly going to play second fiddle if we sit down and watch without taking action.
All right, now Festus Akiboyewa tweets, please let us stop devaluing our young people who are graduates. As we speak, Nigerian graduates are being employed in developed countries.
Tosin Odukale tweets, says the disconnection in our education system, especially at the tertiary level, is that we are not taught to be solution providers, but rather we are taught just to fit into the system.
All right, and Justice Freshman tweets, the level of education is very poor in Nigeria and so old-fashioned that most of our lecturers don't devote time for research. Our lecturers still make use of lecture notes.
Abubakar Baba Shehu tweets, let every profession be managed by its professionals. It's only in Nigeria that you will see a physicist working in a bank. Let's be patriotic and make Nigeria great.
And Cecilia Okoroma tweets, in Nigeria, most teachers lack knowledge, nothing to offer students. It's bad that a computer engineer can't operate a computer.
Shani Makalomakoji again tweets, if we must change the narrative, we must change our curriculum and place more emphasis on skill acquisition instead of some of these inapplicable theories we teach in our institutions. Government must also make the infrastructure needed for this change to take place.
All right, Kingsley, that was Sani Michael Omakoji. I have Philip Fadeon tweets, ensure a basic STEM education system functions effectively at all levels. Let educational curriculum planning adapt to changing workforce requirements and demand. Stop recruiting based on ethnicity and political affiliations. Inculcate entrepreneurship mindset at all levels.
David Jack Solomon says we must create a platform consolidating the latest insights, bringing together different businesses' efforts to address future-oriented skills development and enabling fundamental reform of education systems and labor practices to prepare a workforce for future jobs in Nigeria. Well, those are some of the twists that we can take. And then some comments that are in there. But Okuma, let's bring you in again. You've talked about, of course, listening to what you and the other guests have said. Problem solving and critical thinking, these are major issues that we need to deal with. From the training programs that we organize, and indeed, a number of companies that look to really compete have in-service training for their staff. What do you think can be done with regard to those who are already in the market, you know, or who are already employed, who perhaps do not have the opportunity of going back into embedded general knowledge where they can acquire some of these problem-solving, critical thinking, or emotional intelligence skills?
One of the most serious things that we need to start considering is reorientation. We need to reorientate our people at all levels. My daughter, for instance, is schooling in Canada, started school in Canada. At the primary level, they teach them how to present themselves, how to do presentation, how to build confidence, and they practically take them to do projects that link them up to what is happening in society. We need to do a lot more of that in our educational system. Now, in the workforce, organizations don't send their staff for training anymore. There's a training that is embedded in the system where you learn from your superiors continuously and all that. But if you don't train the superiors, and those people in the system have to learn from their superiors who cannot use the computer, how do you evolve a system that will translate into getting creative thinking minds that will change things?
We'll pause you there. Your final word, Dr. Bindu.
Well, yes, I think Nigeria has the ingredients to push our country to the next level, to build the workers of tomorrow. But we need to learn to cooperate, to network, to coordinate, and be able to work together so that the systems of innovation will be viable.
Dr. Umar Bindu, Secretary to the Adamawa State Government, thank you very much. And let's also appreciate Francis Okumagba, Managing Director, iSkill Limited, and that's a company that promotes knowledge management. Many thanks to you.
Thank you.
We also like to appreciate our two guests first from South Africa, Tope Togo, who is an expert on skills development and job creation and CEO Community Advisory. Thank you, Tope.
Very much. It's a pleasure.
Professor Anthony Keeler, Director, Center for International Advanced and Professional Studies, joining us via Skype from the UK, Cambridge to be precise, in England. Thank you very much for joining us.
For having me, my joy.
All right, so that does it for our second topic for discussion today. Let's go over very quickly now to the Weather Center to check out the prospects for the rest of today.
Hello, welcome to the weather forecast. Part of the northeast on Tuesday morning reported horizontal visibility less than 1,000 meters as a result of dust which was lifted and transported into the country from Chad. As the dust moved further southwards, we expect it to affect the north and central parts of the country with a likelihood of reducing visibility to less than 1,000 meters in one or two places and generally 2 to 5 kilometers in other parts. The inland cities of the south are expected to be sunny and hazy with chances of mist during the early morning hours over the southwestern coast. There are also chances of thundery showers over places around Port Harcourt and Warri during the afternoon and evening hours. Please stand by now for our maximum temperature forecast.
All right, so that does it for our program today. We appreciate your tuning in. We're back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. My name is Kingsley Osagolo. We'll have a nice day. And
don't forget, the second part of this conversation is tomorrow. So we hope you find time to join us. I am Claire Delabu Abdul-Razak. Watch a repeat broadcast at 5 minutes past 5 later today on channel 101 Star Times. Bye-bye.